Good evening, this is Tim Johnson, and Brattleboro Selectboard is up next here on Mtg. The board will be asked to approve a transfer of a first-class liquor license for Blue Moose from 29 High Street to their new location of 39 Main. Under unfinished business, further discussion about energy use in town buildings. And under new business, the board will consider a contract with Bellevue Communications to relocate the Brattleboro Police and Fire radio equipment off Mount Wantasticate, plus add an article to the representative town meeting warning to defray the cost from the unassigned fund balance. In addition, representative to Connecticut River Transit is still in need. A grant appropriation for the fire department in the amount of $30,000 and a grant for the police department in the amount of $5,000, plus discussion on the FY15 municipal budget coming up tonight before the Brattleboro Select Board. All that and more tonight here on BCTV.
Thank you. Good evening. It's January 7th of 2014, and we're here for the first regularly scheduled Brattleboro Select Board meeting of 2014. We know that the meeting has been officially warned because we convened the meeting at 5:15 and went into executive session, from which we've now risen. The first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from our meetings on December 15 and December 17, 2013. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes as presented? We have a motion to approve the minutes from the 15th and 17th of December as presented. Is there any discussion about that from anybody on the board or anybody who's in attendance? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving those minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. The next matter on the agenda is Chair's remarks. I don't have a lot of comments today. Holiday season is over and winter is fully upon us. Obviously, the driving conditions were just terrible yesterday, and we have to just remind and encourage everybody to drive slowly and drive carefully. There were just way too many vehicles in driveways up near the intersection of Union Hill and Western Ave, including the crash that happened there right around 5:30. So please, everybody, exercise caution while driving, particularly in the icy weather. The next item on the agenda is interim town manager's comments.
Thank you, David. I would agree with what David just put out in terms of asking everybody to drive carefully. I would also remind pedestrians, particularly at night, to try and wear bright clothing or reflective bands of any type. That would certainly help to keep you safe. I would also like to just speak very briefly about the section of Western Avenue between the highway, I-91, and Edward Heights, which is out in West Brattleboro. This is a section of road which it's in rough shape at the moment. We're certainly aware of that. The condition of the road surface is subject to frequent potholes. The manner in which we address those potholes is with our what's called the hot box. This allows us to heat up a small batch of asphalt. We can go out there and heat up the pothole, marry the two together, and that provides at least some measure of temporary fix. However, in the winter, both with plows driving over that and with the changing temperature conditions which exist, those patches don't typically last very long. So it's a problem we're very well aware of. I think it's probably important for the public to recognize that that particular section of Western Avenue is subject to what's called concurrent responsibility and jurisdiction. So that's, in effect, a shared responsibility between the town and the state of Vermont, with the state of Vermont being responsible for surface maintenance and paving, and with the town being responsible for fixing potholes and crack sealing. We are investigating the possibility of working with V-Trans to see if we might encourage them to repave that section of road sooner rather than later. But for now, we are actively doing what we can with the resources that we have and in patching where possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Next item on the agenda is Select Board comments and committee reports. Anybody on the Select Board have any comments or committee reports?
I missed the last police fire, so I don't know if, Patrick, were you there? You must have been.
I was.
David, were you? Did you happen to make that
I
one?
was, no.
Okay, so if there was anything that,
It was a worthwhile and enjoyable discussion. No particular decisions were made.
Good.
We took a look and discussed publicly about some potential energy-saving opportunities that may or may not be part of future project plans. But that was the basis of the discussion, along with some minor updates from project manager Steve Horton.
Anybody else on the board have any committee reports or Select Board comments?
I do not.
Next matter on the agenda is public participation. Anybody want to address something that's not on the agenda? This would be a good time. Anybody here for public participation?
How about on the agenda?
Excuse me?
How about on the agenda and something tied in? On bridges, a couple things.
Okay, so we've got a number of items on the agenda tonight, and if you've got something specific you want to speak to that's on the agenda, a good time to do that is when we call that item. If there's something that's not on the agenda that you want to speak to, this is a good time, and the mic is open for that.
Well, I think it,
Wait. If you want to speak to something, you should probably go to the mic.
Okay.
It doesn't amplify for the room,
all right.
but it means that people can hear you on the TV.
Well,
Tell us your name, please.
Bill Diane. One of the things, Kurt wrote a piece in the Commons, I don't know what it was, about 8 months ago or something, and I didn't pay much attention to it about the tax rate increase because of the work for the fire and police departments. I mean, I think you know, trust the town officials and everything, but then it comes to, it seems like the town's hesitating for an energy audit on 5 buildings just because, you know, a relatively small amount, and I'm thinking to myself, there's a connection there. Tax rate going up. This weekend's reformer just had something about the rate. 2/3 of the rate increases because of the fire and police department. I know you've already got money invested in it, but it seems like an awful burden, you know. And as far as there's one other thing about the bus thing. I don't want to volunteer for that. I burn out. I'm a burnout. But this bus system, ever since the town gave that to CRT, I don't have words. Well, I do have words, but I don't want to use them here about the schedule and everything. I mean, I bicycle in the winter basically now because of my frustration, and I know there's a lot of other people that aren't happy about it, and I don't know why they ever switched to 2 buses. If they were going to run 2 buses, I don't know why they didn't make the same route and extend it a little if they wanted to, and have 2 buses running more frequently. I mean, that bus goes to the end of Elliott Street and makes a loop. You're a few hundred feet away from the hospital, and you can't get there unless you. My wife has a bad knee; she can't climb up. And I've talked to other people who have that problem too. That kills people. And then you have to. Who would drive? Who would drive in their car? Would drive down to Guilford to go back up to Western Ave. That's what the bus does. Goes to Price Chopper, makes a loop down to Guilford, and then you end up back on Western Ave. I mean, it's just, anyway, about what I have to say. So,
I want to thank you very much for your comments. It's clear that you're paying attention because you know that position for the bus is on the agenda. So thank you very much, you know, for coming and participating. We will be talking about the tax issues and the energy efficiency issues later in the meeting. And the bus issues, I know that Patrick has looked at them from time to time, and we're looking to get a representative to serve on that board. If you want to say your name, and if you have something to hand out, that's fine. But make sure to,
Sure.
yeah, but make sure when you speak to say your name, and if you're a resident, say what district you're from if you know.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Roxana Dimes. Thank you to all of you who came out tonight. I am an outreach coordinator for an organization called Brattleboro Common Sense. I am a resident here in Brattleboro, and I go to college part-time. I work at multiple different places, and I am taxed at each of them. I can be tried as a legal adult in the criminal system. I have adult responsibilities, yet I am only 16 and I am not allowed to vote. Sorry.
You gave away all the copies.
Here I have a legislation drafted by Brattleboro Common Sense's legal counsel, Paul Gillis. The name may sound familiar because Paul Gillis counseled the Charter Review Committee on the 2012 amendments. The legislation reads as follows. Voters, for purposes of voting at town meetings, shall mean all persons resident in town who have reached the majority age of 16 years and who have taken the voter's oath. I hope that the Select Board recognizes the public interest on this matter of all ages, and I request that the Select Board vote to put this on the ballot in March for a public vote. Thank you.
No, I'm just wondering if we can.
I try not to respond to each and every comment in public participation. We're going to have to look into the process for charter revisions, and I want to thank you for presenting this to us, and I expect somebody from the town will at least be back in touch about the process. Okay? Thank you. Is there anybody else who wants to speak about or speak during public participation? We do. Jan, can you tell me what is the date for the warning setting meeting?
It's January 29 at 5 o'clock.
January 29th at 5 o'clock. So I don't know whether this is the kind of matter that might even wind up on the warning for representative town meeting, because I think there's a lengthier process for charter revision. But we are going to be finalizing the town meeting warning on Wednesday the 29th at 5 o'clock. So that's also by way of an announcement. Any further public participation? Next item on the agenda is to convene as liquor commissioners. Do we have a motion to convene as liquor commissioners? So moved. We have a motion to convene as liquor commissioners. Is there any discussion about that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Patrick?
Yes, sir. So the Blue Moose LLC of 29 High Street in Brattleboro is decided to relocate their business, and the Blue Moose Cafe is going to be moved to a location on Main Street at 39 Main Street. And so this gives the board an opportunity to approve of them transferring their liquor license to the new address. In cases such as this, the applicant need not necessarily be here. Police have reviewed the application and have no objections. They're working with fire on the new facility. And this is an opportunity for the board to approve of the transfer of their existing liquor license to the new location.
Is there any discussion on the board or any questions? Anybody who's in attendance want to speak to this matter? Then we're ready for motion, please.
I move that we transfer a first-class liquor license for the Blue Moose Cafe LLC to 39 Main Street.
Is there any discussion on that motion to transfer Blue Moose's liquor license from High Street to Main Street? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. We're ready for a motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Next matter on the agenda is unfinished business. The unfinished business item is the following motion. At the December 3rd meeting, Dave Scholes made a motion to direct the interim town manager to immediately engage an auditing firm to conduct the proposed audits from the Energy Committee and to come back with proposed cost savings, rebate, and grant opportunities that the audit will provide, that the funding come from the money the town is not currently spending on town manager, not to exceed $3,400. So that's the motion that's up for discussion. We had a lengthy discussion about it on December 3rd. Although I don't remember the wording being quite that detailed.
Yeah,
Is that what you said?
that's why we have Jan.
Yeah,
I'm
excellent.
sure I said more than that.
Okay,
You
well,
got the essence of it.
thank you. So I'll call on Patrick first.
Okay. At that meeting, I don't recall the date, December 3rd, I was asked to take a look and to report back to the board at this meeting as to the likelihood of our ability to project a surplus that could compensate for this. And I guess, after consulting with John O'Connor, our finance director, the two of us put our heads together, and in effect, what we would like to respond back is to say that at this juncture, which is the first week of January, it's very early. And in fact, it's too early to really make a clear prediction about where our budget will end up this year. That's a topic usually taken up in June, not December or January. With that said, there are a variety of known factors that the board should be aware of. I tried to summarize them here in the administrative report. There is anticipated a savings from Sondag's departure of roughly $30,000. Our liability coverage with the League of Cities and Towns was restructured. That's going to yield a savings of approximately $60,000. In addition, the town budgeted in this fiscal year for the full bond and interest payment for the police and fire facilities, which we later decided to break up into two different bonds. So there's likely going to be a surplus there of roughly $200,000. And in addition to that, there's some savings from the bus service and the street lights. So all of those work in our favor to suspect that there could be a surplus for the year. With that said, there are a number of things working against it. One of which is there's anticipation that property taxes are going to be at least $150,000 less than originally anticipated, and other revenue sources are going to be down somewhat as well. In addition to that, as the board will recall, a couple of meetings ago, we talked about the damages from the storm that happened in September, and that there was $92,000 and change in unforeseen expenses there. In addition, I would only seek to remind the board that the year's only half over, and future emergencies may occur. So, with that said, I'll hand the discussion back to you.
Thank you, Patrick. I have some things to say, but I'll wait until everybody on the board, or anybody on the board has a chance to speak to this. Does anybody on the board want to speak to it at this point?
I think we should let you go.
You want to let me go?
Yeah, you can go.
Okay. I tried to follow up on this motion by seeking some additional information over the course of the last weeks and month, because I had some concerns about the $3,400 figure that had been proposed. And so I sent an email out to the town energy coordinator seeking some additional information. First, I wanted to verify the amount of the savings that we've actually experienced as a result of the energy efficiency work. And I wanted to make sure that when we floated numbers, because there have been numbers that have been presented to the board, whether those numbers are really the result of careful analysis that accounts for the various work that gets done over the course of any given year and variations in temperature and weather conditions, because that obviously impacts the amount of money that we've saved and the amount of energy reductions. And I also asked some other questions about this. For example, I really questioned the notion that $3,400 was a realistic number for auditing these facilities. The buildings that the town operates are incredibly complex facilities. This building has got a secure area within it, and it's got areas that are not open for public use, and it's in operation significant portions of the day. It's a very large facility, and I had energy efficiency work done in my home, and we had to close the whole building up, the whole structure up, and try to blow air out the front door to see where air was coming in everywhere else. And I just can't fathom what it would cost to do that, and the work that it would cost to do that here in Town Hall. I have similar concerns about the other facilities in town. There's been discussion about the water treatment facility, but I know that that's subject to substantial security measures that restrict access and who can go into that building and what sort of security measures need to be taken before somebody can go in there. The fire buildings are going to be renovated, and so there's no reason to do energy audits there right now because they're going to be totally renovated. And I just did not think that $3,400 was a realistic figure. What's more, energy audits are going to require, I think, time and effort by town employees. And I don't think there's been any quantification of the time and the cost to the town of the employee time that's going to be spent doing these audits, and the lost employee time that would be spent from working on other projects. I raised a series of other questions with Paul as well. I am totally in favor of making a real commitment to doing additional energy efficiency work in the coming year. But I want to make sure that what we're commissioning is done in a thoughtful, organized manner that has all of the necessary preparation work beforehand, so that we've got a plan for where we're starting and where we're going, so that we can really determine whether spending the money is going to save us money in the long term. It is altogether likely that, for example, energy efficiency work here in Town Hall could prove to be very, very expensive, given the work that may need to be done and the materials that are currently in the building and probably in the space above the third floor. So I think it's going to be a very, very significant project, and it's not clear to me at this point that either the scope of the work or the money that's being asked for is realistic in any regard. And I've certainly seen nothing that changes my mind about the work being properly thought out and the expenses properly estimated. I don't think the $3,400 is a realistic figure, and saying let's do it tomorrow I don't think is really in the town's best interest at this point, given where we are. My personal preference would be to set up and to propose setting up a fund with a real amount of money in it so that we can plan appropriately and plan on doing energy efficiency work over the course of the next budget year. And I personally would like to see a $50,000 fund established so that we can begin doing the work and planning the work in the right way and determine if we can make real savings. Now, where that money's going to come from is really a very, very difficult question to answer. Part of me thinks that we need to re-examine changing priorities, and that the most appropriate source of that funding should be a retasking of half of the agriculture a loan fund, because we have priorities as a town, and 15 or 20 years ago when we set up that ag loan fund, that was a significant priority here. But it certainly seems to me that taking half of that money, rather than just to offset the tax levy this year, but rather to set up energy efficiency fund, would be a really, really good thing that would be in the public interest. And that's something I'd be in favor of, although we have to determine how to go about it procedurally, since we already voted to put the entire retasking of that ag loan fund onto the budget for tax relief. But I'm not in favor of just saying, let's spend $3,400 this year to do this work. I really want to have a well-thought-out long-term plan that's going to take us to a place where we can really see if we're going to be saving some money. So I'm going to vote against this motion for right now, but I want to figure out a way, if we can, in the next couple of weeks, to try to develop a way to put a real, meaningful fund together to do energy efficiency work in the next fiscal year. I'd also note that without having a town manager and assistant in place, it's going to be very hard for the town to get that work done, because we have a town that's got a significant enough administration that with just the one person at the helm doing the energy efficiency work and having that properly coordinated from the administration level is going to be very hard without having an assistant in place as well. So that was a lot to say. I'm sorry it went too long. I didn't promise it was going to be short, but that's where I'm at.
Good question.
Donna.
And this is the issue about which I feel some urgency, and I'm just wondering, are you proposing tonight that we consider the $50,000? Is that a motion that you want to bring tonight, or just raise that as an issue?
I'm raising it tonight, and I think I'm probably going to make it as a motion at the next meeting so it can then be addressed before the warning finalizing meeting on the 29th. So I'll make the motion on the 21st. I don't want to do that precipitously either.
Okay.
Because we also have another motion on for tonight to pull money out of the surplus to pay for the tower.
Right.
And I know that John had some goal of trying to pull some money out of the surplus for tax relief.
Yes.
And I think we all need to have a healthy discussion about just where we're going to be drawing money for long-term and short-term projects. But the idea of having a $50,000 energy audit fund so that it can be planned and executed appropriately seems like a proper long-term strategy. I just don't know how to achieve it yet.
Right.
Well, I absolutely agree with everything he said, but I know you're concerned too about moving things forward quickly, but because of the budget crunch that we're in, I really want to spend our money as logically and David summed it up, I thought, very well. You know, we have to. I don't think there's anybody at this table that doesn't want to do some kind of audit to figure out how we can better, you know, how the town can run better, how things can run better. And I also had the same feeling about the $3,400, that it's so minimal that I just don't know what can be done for that. And I know the scopes of these buildings, and it just seems like we're throwing such little money at it that I don't think we'll get that much of a reward out of it. You know,
And I agree that I think it
but where do we get the 50,000?
right. So that's the issue.
But I agree that we have to, at some point, put more money towards it to reap better rewards from it.
Right.
But $3,400 just doesn't.
So it's one of those immediate needs versus really making some systemic changes that will eventually relieve the
Right.
budget burdens that we're facing. So as long as we're going to revisit it in a couple of weeks, that feels okay to me.
And I really don't know how it can be done in this fiscal, in this before town meeting. I don't know. I mean, maybe we can. Maybe it can be done. Okay.
I have a couple of questions, and I'd like to hear, there are a lot of energy faces out there, and I've gotten a couple emails and some information about the inaccuracy of the estimates for the audits. And so now you just raised a couple other questions, like where would the money come from? And so one procedural question is, we already have an item on the warning to take the interest from the ag fund, the ag loan fund, and apply it to taxes. Can we have another one saying, instead of applying it to taxes, apply it to an ongoing energy conservation fund? And let the town reps make a decision about that.
I think that the motion, and Jan will have to confirm this between now and the next meeting, I think the motion was to rededicate or redirect the entirety of the ag fund to tax relief. And there had been some suggestion by members of the ag committee that maybe we wanted to take the interest, but not the principal. All right, but I think the motion was to take all the money.
The motion was to approve repurposing of the funds in the Agricultural Land Protection Fund for fiscal year 2015 tax relief.
There you go. So I remember that correctly, but I'll talk with the town attorney about that, and I'll ask the town manager to talk with the town attorney about that as well, because there's going to be a number of articles that we're going to be considering for application of money out of the surplus, and it may be that for the purposes of finalizing the warning, that we can just revisit that motion that we made about the ag fund based upon priorities that have developed since that time. But we'll know the answer by 2 weeks from tonight.
I'd like to, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'm pretty sure I'm going to amend the motion,
All right.
but I'm not sure what I'm going to try to put in it until I get some more information.
Good. Anybody else from the board?
Yeah, I actually agree with everything you said as well. I'd rather do something thoughtfully and do it right and put the adequate resources behind something instead of doing it, quickly and not doing it adequately. Because if we don't do it adequately, we don't put the proper resources behind it, we're going to end up doing it again. So I'd rather, do something, and if we could get the 50,000, I think it's a great idea. So I'd rather do it right the first time.
Anybody else on the board? Anybody in attendance want to speak to this matter that's on the table? You want to say your name again? I didn't catch your last name before. Diane. All right, go ahead.
I'm hoping you're just not kicking this down the road. This thing about the fire and police station, it's too bad you couldn't consolidate everything. I heard that the architect at one point said it would be better if the police station was a standalone building. Are you just determined that there's no chance of changes in the plan? It sounds like you're scraping the barrel to me to try to figure out how to do things. I don't know. Am I getting the gist of what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying.
I know I've been living in this area. The first time I moved up here was '72, and I know the police were here then. I don't know how long they've been in this building. I know it isn't the best of situation, and I got the feasibility study, copy of that, and it looked good on paper, and it just seems like I don't want to see like an energy audit. It sounds what you're saying sounds good. I don't know if I trust what you're saying. It sounds good that you're going to put up $50,000 with the expenditures for the police and fire station, 3 separate facilities. I don't know if, that's all I got to say. I'm troubled by it. You know, and energy efficient and global climate change. And Typhoon Haiyan threw me for a loop. And I was listening to Democracy Now and the climate change conference. They had the fossil fuel companies' banners up on the building. You know, I'd like to see Brattleboro contribute to, you know, what they can do to fight climate change. So that's about what I have to say, I guess.
Thank you, sir. I don't know if Lester's going to speak first, just because the person right behind you is also standing up. Come on, Lester.
Lester Humphreys, Chair of the Energy Committee. I guess I want to speak in support of what David has said as far as there being a well thought out plan and time taking to find out exactly how much the audits are going to cost and to have them done right. The original number came from the Energy Committee, specifically from a member of the Energy Committee, and it's clear after he and Patrick started looking into it that the number is incorrect, that $3,400 is not an accurate figure for 5 or 6 buildings. The latest information we have is not final. Just this building would be in the $3,000 to $4,000 range. Having said that, we still feel like the energy savings potential is still there. The Efficiency Vermont walkthrough revealed many items, and so I want to agree with what David said is the potential. And the right way to do this is to put aside some money so that it can be done right over time. But there is some urgency to get money put aside now so that we're not looking at FY15, FY16 to start on the process. And so I'd just like to speak in support of the Select Board figuring out the right way to do this and put this money aside as has been said earlier.
Sorry, can I just have some questions?
Howard.
Just for clarification, Lester, you said you agreed with David and 2 Davids.
No, I'm Dave. That's how you tell us apart.
You can call him Gus.
Yeah. Or we can do that too.
Gardenstein, David Gardenstein.
David Gus.
Uh-oh.
Can we call you Gus?
If you must. If you'd identify yourself, please.
Tim Maysale, I'm from Brattleboro. And first, I'd like to applaud the Energy Committee for the work that they've done. I think that moving for solar energy for the 3 elementary schools with the 500 kilowatt solar farm is really the move in the right direction. One of the biggest accomplishments in 2013. So I don't know anybody on the Energy Committee, but I applaud the work that they've done. The questions that the board has raised about $3,400 being a waste of money, I don't fully agree with. I think that this would be a first step. I like your idea of $50,000 for a serious energy audit, and I see that $3,400 or $4,400 would be the first step in legitimizing an argument towards that $50,000. I see that $3,400 targeted towards one building perhaps would give the leverage needed for further significant work in energy savings. I live in Brattleboro. I pay way too many taxes. That's why I came out of the cold to this meeting tonight, because I want to see my taxes well spent. And I see that $3,400 would be the seed money, the money for ideation to really move forward in energy savings. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Kurt?
Good evening. My name's Kurt Dimes. I live in Brattleboro. I would give the board, I would take $5 to give you just this advice. We could save a lot of money by turning the thermostat down. It's warm in here, and I think we could do the simplest things and save a lot of money. Not just $50,000 in fuel, but $50,000 in consultation. And none of that should come out of Brattleboro climate protection. They're very important and a good expenditure. But if we keep things simple, I think we can gain a lot. And that would begin with the simplest common sense measures of conservation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak to the matter, Paul?
Good evening, Paul Cameron, Town Energy Coordinator. I think I speak for the Energy Committee when I say that we support setting up a fund, as has been proposed, for doing the energy audits and energy work. This is something that the town of Wilmington has done successfully and have achieved energy and cost savings. I think we also, though, support moving forward as quickly as possible in doing in an energy audit of this building. The latest estimate that we have is that it would cost $3,500. This is from a company called Zero by Degrees in Fairleigh, Vermont. And if there's a way to find the funding to do that, we can move forward quicker and we can start achieving the savings quicker. But we do support setting up a fund. We think we do need a plan, and we need to do this right and do it deliberately and prioritize these projects in the buildings and do them one by one. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Anybody else? Yes.
Kim Smith, and I'm staffing the Wyndham Regional Commission's Energy Committee. First of all, I really appreciate your approach of wanting to be very thoughtful and do this well, and your commitment to doing these energy efficiency measures. I also want to just emphasize the value of doing this and moving forward on this rapidly. Since 2010, there have been 9 municipal buildings in the Wyndham region that have done weatherization retrofits, and on average, they're getting a return of investment of 14% and a payback period of 7 years. And there's almost no risk involved with this because you get those benefits for the life of the building. You know, short of a building burning down or similar, you keep reaping those benefits. One example is the Wyndham County Superior Courthouse. They put $36,000 into a weatherization retrofit. They expect to get those savings back in 6.5 years for a return on investment of 15%. And then I just really want to also emphasize the importance of the energy audit in being able to give you the background in order to help you move forward in the most effective manner possible. The professional energy auditors will have the equipment to give you the information you need. They'll give you the information that you need in order to prioritize which options will be the most effective, and they'll be able to identify problems along the way, such as closing off a basement so much so that there's the potential for mold to grow or other possible problems. So I really appreciate your approach, and I encourage you to keep moving on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak to the matter that's on the floor?
Name is Chad Simmons, Brattleboro, and I agree with everything the last 5 people said.
Tad?
Tad Montgomery, Brattleboro. David Gartenstein, I want to commend you on your insight into the true costs of energy audits. When I heard that $750 per building figure, I said, wow, fantastic, isn't that going to be great? And didn't even think twice about how accurate that number was going to be. And I won't let that mistake happen again. I feel quite abashed about letting that slip through to you all. I also think that $50,000 proposed fund is about the best news I've heard coming to the Energy Committee in a number of years, and that sounds very forward-thinking. I would say, though, that the $34 or so $100 that David Scholes is trying to get in this fiscal year could be very well spent on perhaps this building and doing a thorough and comprehensive audit of this building. There has been some talk about trying to get that done quickly, get it done this winter, in order that we might somehow wrap the measures in with the police fire renovation. Who knows if that would be possible, but it would start with the comprehensive audit. So I would encourage you to try to make that happen if you can. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak to this item who's in attendance? Anybody on the board want to speak to it now?
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Sean?
The only question I have is, what was the extent of the audit when Honeywell did theirs? Because that wasn't that long ago, right?
I'm prepared preliminarily to speak to that.
Okay.
And I'll do that in a minute. Dave, you want to go ahead? Or
No, go ahead.
All right. So I have tried to understand, one of the reasons that I want to make sure that we're properly looking at where we've been
Right.
and where we're going. There's been a little bit of a undertone questioning whether there's been a commitment by the town of Brattleboro
Right.
to energy efficiency measures in some of what I've heard. And I think we need to be really clear that the town invested huge amounts of money in the Honeywell project. We committed, and John got me these numbers recently, we are paying still, after the refinancing, $127,000 a year, and we'll be doing so every year through 2021, and have been doing so for at least 5 or 10 years now, for the Honeywell energy efficiency work. We also have an annual service contract with Honeywell. So annually, for the previous energy efficiency work that we did through Honeywell, we're currently paying $144,000 a year on the annual lease payment, and then for the annual service contract. And it would appear that there are net energy savings that we're now realizing, although I'm not convinced that those numbers have been audited. The scope of the Honeywell work, as I understand it, is different from what's now being proposed, in that the Honeywell work was not particularly building envelope sealing.
Right.
And so it's my understanding that that's what's now being proposed, looking at the envelopes of the building to make sure that they are as energy efficient as possible. That's part of my concern, to make sure that it's a well thought out plan from where we've been to where we're going. I also have some concerns about doing an energy audit right at this moment in time and putting the financing forward for that with respect to this municipal center, because there is work, significant work, that's contemplated for this building as part of the police department renovations. And any energy efficiency work that we would be doing in the building as a whole would have to take into account what's going to be happening in that southwest corner of the building, and in the basement there as well. So I know that energy efficiency is something that's on the minds of the police fire designers.
Yes.
But I'm a little concerned about just deciding to go ahead and do that now, and the risk that that may be precipitous, given that there's work still to be done with police.
Well, I'm really concerned that, at that point when Honeywell came in and, they must have done an audit on the whole building and not just on their scope of the work to find out where the inefficiencies were. And I've always questioned it, because I don't see where we've reaped any rewards from it. Because the building is still as dysfunctional as it was, but we're paying every year for that. And we're gonna be paying until 2021. And that's why I just wanna pull back a little bit on just throwing money out there but doing it and having a little bit more thoughtful approach to it.
Lester and Paul have the figures and can explain that we are now in the net energy savings realm of that contract. And we've had that presentation before.
Right.
I don't want to go through it in detail now. I see you want to jump up, Lester, and say so, but I know that's the answer you're going to give because you've given it before.
And I think we should hear from, because, I mean, what John implied is that we're paying all this money and we're not getting a return. And I think it's necessary. I mean, Honeywell does provide a report every year. And I think it's worthwhile to...
Lester, if you could do it quickly,
articulate
so we just, because we've heard it before. Yeah.
The Energy Committee. We've looked at the numbers very carefully and gone through it, and the savings outstrip even those costs that you're seeing. It's very clear. We can go through the numbers with you, with any member personally, go through it. We'd like to have you up to speed on that. The project has been very successful from a financial point of view. And I also want to echo what David was saying. The past select boards, this select board, there has been a commitment to energy efficiency, and the Honeywell project represents that. Now, the project looked at energy systems, furnaces, things like that. It did not look at the envelope, as David had said. And that report would be a starting point for any audit. So we would present that report and the work that was done to the auditor and say, this is what's already been done, and only pay for additional audit work that was not done by that. Honeywell did not do a blower door test. They did not look at air infiltration. They did not look at insulation in the attic. So there were concrete things that that were not the scope of them. Honeywell is a systems, furnace, company. They're not looking at envelope issues. So there's still more work to done. So, just in quick summary, a lot of progress is made. It is paying big dividends now. It only went so far. There's more to do. That's the start. We want to build on that.
Thank you.
I'd like to try to draw this to a close. There's a motion that's on the table, and I've made a suggestion as to something else to proceed, but I'm not ready to have that addressed as a motion now. So, Dave, back to you.
Okay. Well, I haven't heard anything that I don't very much agree with, and I've heard a whole range of things. I think what I'm seeing at this point is first there are two figures. One is $3,400, and one is $50,000. And starting with the $3,400, and I'm not sure that that's the exact amount of money that was available, but at some point last summer, the money was identified to be used for energy audits, and it got spent on something else. So that's the first point. That money is supposed to be there in the first place, and it got spent on something else. I don't know what else it got spent on. That's moot at this point. We're looking at the conversation about thoughtful, organized plan. I couldn't disagree with any of that. I think it's or saying that the town does not pay attention to energy. I think those things are really obvious. It's great to restate them, but I think I don't think that's the issue. The issue is where are we going now? And to have a thoughtful, organized plan, the first thing you have to have are audits. And what we found out over the last month of looking into the motion that I made, whenever that was, is that we can get estimates for the audits of all these buildings for no cost at all. The estimates are free. And then, if we get those estimates, then we can take a look at the estimates and then look again at this whole question of the $3,400. And if we want to try and spend some amount of money, that much or more out of this year's budget, to start that process, to what is the first step. We can't do anything without the audits. We can't do the audits until we know what they're going to cost, so we need to get that done. So I'm not sure the order of things, so I'm going to wait to amend my motion. And I know I can't do it after I speak to it, so you'll have to recognize me again, unless you want to suspend Robert's rules.
I
So that's the 3,500. I think the money was supposed to be there. It got spent on something else. If we get the audit estimates done, then we can decide what we want to do going forward. And based on Patrick's work in terms of what our savings are in this year's budget and what the unanticipated expenses were, it still looks like we've got about potential for a $90,000 surplus. So hopefully that'll be there the next time this comes around after we get the audit estimates. So that's the 3,400. Then there's the 50,000. And I want to point out, and I want to say this respectfully and very much in the way that you pointed out when people say, well, can't you guys do something about the budget, that the implications that previous select boards didn't even try and that everybody blew it and we're the only ones that can do it, is that there's a big difference between proposing $50,000 for an energy conservation fund and paying for it. And I heard the proposal, and I heard all the heads going up and down. Everybody saying, yeah, but nobody wants to assign the money. And there, if you look in the information we got from Patrick, there's street light changeover to LED bulbs should deliver a savings of $50,000 this year. That number will increase because more lights are being converted, and it will recur every year. So I would suggest that we consider using the $50,000 we're going to save from the streetlights to fund that fund, and to do that and to put it on when we meet to talk about the warnings, to consider adding that. Because again, it's to propose something is it's not real until you say we're going to pay for it. And I think somebody pointed that out and said that they didn't have a lot of faith in us following through because we don't have the money. So if we don't identify it, it's just, well, I won't go there. So that's it. Can I now have a motion?
So you can go ahead and amend your motion if you want to at this
Unless
point.
you-
I
okay.
don't have any problem with that, and I'm not concerned about the procedural correctness of it. So you'll go ahead and do that, and
Okay.
then I have some comments. But
So the first part stays the same. Motion by David Scholes to direct the interim town manager to immediately engage an auditing firm to, and then change it to estimate the cost of the proposed audits from the Energy Committee. And that would be the end of the motion. May I speak to the motion?
Go for it.
And that once we get those estimates, and we get this as quickly as possible, I know Patrick's already engaged with the auditing company, that we then put it back on our agenda, look at what that's like, see if we can make the first step in the plan.
Is that all? Don't you want to speak to it?
No,
That's enough.
just trying to not break Robert's rules.
It's all right. Anybody else on the board want to speak to it?
Nope, go ahead.
The process of getting the budget to where it is right now, which is going to be the last significant item on the agenda tonight, has been a lengthy and arduous one. And part of the current figure is the $50,000 savings from the streetlights. So saying that we're going to use the savings from the streetlights to fund the energy audits, I'm not prepared to agree with that at this point either. I also just, like I said before, have a concern about time and effort that's available. I do think that there's a staffing level issue in terms of getting everything done when we're down a person in the town manager's office. And so I might support this motion to engage an auditing firm to estimate the cost of this work. But I am, before committing to going ahead, going to want to see a broader plan that's thought out with full administration buy-in as well. And I think it's going to take some time to do so until there's personnel on board. Dave, John?
The only thing, and this is where we,
Yeah.
where we're on opposite ends. That is your goal. my goal is to lower property taxes in town. And so, at the end of the day, for me, it's looking at every nickel and trying to get it back to the single-family homeowners in town to lower the taxes. And I know in the long run, the energy help, all these savings help, but for my fiscal responsibility for this year and this budget, I am trying to scrape every penny I can find to lower property taxes. So, and you've heard, that's my spiel.
I get it.
And so 50,000 to me is, that's 0.5%. And I'm going for that. So, but I understand the other side of it, that if we're not forward thinking, but for right now, because of the crunch that we're in, I'm just looking for every nickel. And you'll be hearing from me later in the program.
Donna?
I really like the idea of taking the $50,000 that we have saved from the lighting situation and making a commitment with that. And I think it's that tension between immediate relief for the taxpayers. And I like that there's such a strong, steady voice on the board. I think there needs to be. And I also hear about that. But I feel like this is one of those places where the rubber has to hit the road, that if we don't get some traction in terms of reinvesting the savings in future potential savings, that we're just postponing the problem. And so for that reason, I'm going to support that motion when it's raised. And I don't see any reason to delay approving the $3,400 for audits. And I would want to do that in conjunction with what is feasible and doable, being the staffing situation in the town manager's office. But I am not in favor of postponing it. I am in favor of putting a significant hunk of money behind, making a commitment that I can only imagine will continue to benefit this town over the long haul. And I think, we all feel global climate change happening. It's not as mysterious, and it's not a fantasy. It's a reality. We've lived through some of the manifestations of that, and I feel like there's a direct link between preparedness and how we spend our money, as tight as it is in this town. So,
Patrick?
Yes, sir. 2 points. One, the point I started with, and then a new point. Point I started with was it's only halfway through the fiscal year, and any potential savings that we can forecast at this time is yet to be an actual or real savings. It is a forecasted savings. So the board should keep that in mind when considering the spending of resources. Second thing is, I continue to work with Bob Reuter, who is a member of the Energy Committee, and continue to dig a little deeper into what will be required to conduct an energy audit of this facility here, the Municipal Center, and hope to have a scope of work and a budget that I can support in the near future. It's taken us a little time to sort of get to know each other, to understand the process, as it relates to a facility like this. I think that's forced a little bit of ground truthing of some original estimates, but I hope to be able to arrive at an estimate which is realistic in the near future. That's for this facility.
So the...
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
I am fine with the new motion, which is to go out and get estimates on how to do it. I'm not ready yet to figure out where the $50,000 is going to come from, pretty much for the reasons that Patrick just said. We don't know. And I also appreciate the fact that we need to do an energy audit in this building, because I am sitting with my scarf and my coat on because I'm freezing. So I think it sort of speaks to the fact that we're in coats, that we need to do it right. And I want to make sure we do it right. I'm also not, I would rather, Patrick just talked about working with Bob on figuring out what it's really going to cost to do one here, and I think that's really important, because we had an estimate, we've had different estimates on what an audit of this building would be. So I, at this point, am uncomfortable saying, well, we'll give $3,500 when we really don't know if that's enough. It might be too much, it might not be enough. I have a feeling it's probably not enough. So I'm very hesitant to say tonight, let's give $3,500 to something we really don't know that that's what it is. So I'm comfortable with let's get the estimates and then go from there, and then let's look thoughtfully on where we can get the 50,000. Again, we're sitting here freezing, so there's something needs to happen.
Kurt's warm.
It's much better than the last one.
I don't know how you're warm.
He's wearing his hat,
That's a way of thinking. I'm thinking I'm cold.
So the motion on the floor, and I may change the language a tiny bit if that's okay with you.
Depends on what you do.
Well, yeah, I understand. The motion on the floor is that the select board directs the interim town manager to immediately engage an auditing firm to estimate the costs of audits of the town's facilities.
Yeah, that's fine. Just one quick clarification.
Yeah.
The reason to get estimates for all the buildings is that if we find that there's one that's just glaringly available and we can put a little bit of money in and get a whole bunch of money back, which might fund some other ones, I want to be able to include that in our planning. I understand the reason to do this building with the upcoming project, the upcoming potential changes, but that may not be the best place to start. That's part of a good plan.
Are we ready for that motion? Patrick, you ready to say something?
Well, the only real reservation I have from that particular motion at this particular moment is that I continue to refine what in fact would be the scope of the work. So engaging a firm immediately is fine. However, it's quickly the question is quickly going to be reduced to do what specifically, and the conversations that Mr. Reuter and I have had and have been focusing on developing what is the appropriate scope for that work to be, and so that's kind of where my head's at the moment, which is what is it what is it specifically that the town of Brattleboro is seeking to have performed? Obviously, generically speaking, we'd like to have an energy audit. We'd like to have a particular type of energy audit, one where there's a building envelope evaluation performed in a series of different tests. But that discussion over the scope of work has changed, even in the brief period of time in which I've been discussing it with Bob. So that's the concern I face at the moment.
Well, and you also face the reality of doing two jobs.
That's a
well,
reality
1
I face
and 3/4,
all the
because
time.
I'm
This
sure
is
Jan's doing at least a quarter of it too. But
Jan's doing a
or
ton of
more
work.
than that, yeah. But so I mean, I recognize that completely. Immediate is a relative term.
Immediate's a
I'm
relative
also
term.
hoping that there is
And
a
frankly,
generic process.
I would feel personally, as a manager and somebody who's responsible for each of these facilities, I would feel more comfortable having a discussion with the board when we've nailed down, all right, this is the scope of the work that we wish to have performed. Then we can begin to engage. This is going to take a number of department heads and their involvement. As David pointed out, each of these facilities, there really isn't a simple and easy facility out there that the town owns. Probably the closest thing to it would be the Gibson-Aiken Center. But that's at least a busy building. So with a sense that the scope of the work was fairly well honed in on. And the requirements of the firm that we would be working with is, we've come to some level of agreement between the gentleman that I've been working with from the Energy Committee. Then assessing what the cost would be on a per facility basis seems like something doable. So if we can not be too terribly aggressive about our interpretation of immediately, or perhaps strike the word, it's clear to me that it's of interest.
It's fine to take it out. I hear exactly what you're saying.
All right. Jane, could you read the motion back without the word immediately?
I think the motion is to direct the interim town manager to engage an auditing firm to estimate costs of proposed audits of town facilities.
Okay. Are we ready for that motion?
Can I, new thought?
Yeah.
If that's all right?
Please do. We're hoping to draw this agenda item to a close.
I'd love to. Should we limit the scope of this discussion to the facilities listed here on the original memo from the Energy Committee?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, that's why I had that.
All right.
that
To the
entity.
facilities listed on the Energy Committee's November 26, 2013 memo.
With the addition of the municipal center. Sorry.
Can you read the motion, but stop before the word facilities?
To direct the interim town manager to engage an auditing firm to estimate costs of proposed audits
At the Municipal Center, Brooks Library, Gibson Aiken Center, Public Works Garage, Skating Rink, and Water Treatment Plant. Are we ready for that motion?
Yes.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you for that healthy discussion.
I love the way
Thank
we
you, Energy
disagree.
Committee, for participating. You like to disagree?
The way we went.
Did we disagree?
No, we solved it.
Okay. Next matter on the agenda is, well, we're into new business. Next matter on the agenda is Communications Tower. Patrick, do you want to tell us where we are?
Yes, I'd like to at least introduce the concept. As the board will recall, early last fall, the town had become aware that the present-day owner of the communications tower on Wetaskiwin Mountain was seeking to increase the rent. And the rent was going to increase from $10 a year to $1,000 a month. In addition to that, the town would be responsible for the energy costs associated with operating that facility. Through a little bit of investigation and exploration, it became clear that the increase in this cost stemmed, at least in part, from the state of New Hampshire's desire to generate new revenue and their insistence, given that they own the land upon which the Wetaskiwin Mountain Tower is located, they were going to be raising their rents to the tower owner, and the tower owner was, in effect, passing that cost on to us. Before we agreed to, or rather before the administration would make a recommendation of agreeing to that rent, which would be a lease agreement that they were proposing for 5 years, which would be renewable each 5 years and would have a 3% escalator each year, we began to start to look around and see what other potential options might be available to help lower costs for the taxpayer over the long haul. Thankfully, we were aided in a number of ways from a variety of different community partners. Several locations reached out to the town and made offers to us to help situate our equipment onto new locations across Brattleboro that would provide substantial cost savings to the town of Brattleboro over the long run. And I'll leave some of that up to the chiefs to kind of describe. However, what that required from us was to be able to, in order to determine if we could take advantage of these new sites, we had to do some analysis to make sure that they would in fact work for our police communication system and our fire communication system. So I've invited the chiefs here tonight, along with Joe Newton, who's our fire alarm superintendent, and Mr. Bellevue from Bellevue Communications. He is a vendor that we've worked with for some time and was very integral in bringing this proposal before us. Before I turn it over to the gentleman, I guess what I would like to say is what we are seeking specifically from the board this evening is funds necessary to, in effect, restructure our radio communication system. And the idea behind this is a one-time cost that would eliminate the need for us to sign an extended contract at CTI or anywhere else. And so in the long run, the town of Brattleboro would enjoy significant savings by making use of the plan that the gentlemen are about to explain. I would just like to draw your attention to the fact that in the administrative report, I put together 2 potential motions, and the motions are different in a specific way. The first motion contemplates the board supporting this expense, which is unbudgeted, out of the present year's potential surplus. The second motion, in effect, seeks that same support, however, is seeking representative town meeting approval for use of unassigned fund balance. The unassigned fund balance is the accumulated surplus, and the board will recall we set a policy, I believe, or a guideline about a year ago that we would like to have 10% of this maintained, and that's the sort of buffer that a $16 million business makes sense for us to retain. So these 2 motions are effectively to provide the resources with which to put in place the plan these gentlemen will describe. The first one is from this year's surplus or seeking it from unassigned fund balance, which would require representative town meeting approval. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the chiefs and let them talk a little bit about the work that they've done and maybe describe a little bit some of the generous offers that have fallen to the town of Brattleboro as a result of this work.
Good evening. I'll kind of do our quick intro here, and then I'll turn it over to these folks for the technical stuff. But in your packets, I'm sure you found quite a lengthy memo from me trying to describe where we're at, or where we've been, where we're at, and where we want to go. I want to quickly try to summarize some of this, and I'll probably repeat a little bit what Patrick said, but I think it's important for the board to understand what truly has been accomplished here and what we're going to gain by doing this, because it is a pretty big chunk of money that you're looking at to appropriate for us to do this. I think it's also important to say up front that we wouldn't be sitting here tonight if it wasn't for the hard work of Joe Newton. He's done 99.9% of the legwork with Bruce to really bring this thing together, and he's really done a nice job with this. And again, without what he's done, this wouldn't be working the way it is. So obviously, we've had a request for a significant lease increase up on what we call the mountain site on Wantastica Mountain. Basically from $10 a year up to $12,000 a year, along with a 3% increase every year over the 5-year lease agreement. Also along with that comes the maintenance on the building. There's a building up there that basically they don't want anything to do with, and if we want our equipment in it, we need to take care of it. So we'd be responsible for the maintenance on the building, as well as the maintenance on the power lines that run up the mountain that power that building for our equipment. 6 years ago, those lines were trimmed back, trees were trimmed back from the power lines, and at a cost of approximately $15,000. So if we had to do that today, I'm sure it'd be substantially more. We also pay a $3,000 a year lease at Ames Hill for fire radio equipment. Right now, what we've got is fire has radio equipment on Wantastica Mountain, Pleasant Valley on a town site, Ames Hill where we pay a lease, and then we have equipment on top of Central Fire Station. The police department has equipment on Wantastica Mountain and up at SIT off Black Mountain Road. Like I said, all of that stuff we're looking at now a lease of $15,000 a year plus electric, plus building maintenance, plus power line maintenance. If we go ahead with what we're proposing, which is, as you're all aware, the police department has applied for a grant through Homeland Security, which Chief Wren can speak to. He's still waiting to hear the results of that grant application. If he receives the grant, what will happen is we will continue to have fire equipment at Pleasant Valley. We will move equipment to SIT. We will move equipment to Brattleboro Memorial Hospital and continue to have equipment on Central Fire Station. The PD, with the grant, will move equipment to Pleasant Valley. They will keep equipment at SIT where they presently have equipment. They will move equipment to the Memorial Hospital, and they will also move equipment to Central Fire Station. If they don't get the grant, they'll have equipment at Pleasant Valley, SIT, and what we're proposing is to move some of their equipment to Harris Hill Ski, the top of Harris Hill Ski Jump. These moves, once they're all done, the town will have no lease on any sites, so we'll be saving all of that money. We will do away with all electrical costs on the mountain and only continue to pay what we are now for electrical costs, which are at the Central Fire Station, Pleasant Valley, and SIT. And as Patrick has said, a lot of agencies have come forward to help us, or a lot of community partners. Memorial Hospital has offered us the site on their new building up there, Richards Building, at no cost to the town, and they're even going to pick up the electrical costs for the equipment that's going to go there. SIT is not going to charge us any lease agreement. Public Works and the police department currently have equipment up there, so we're paying an electrical bill. That's how we pay up there. And there's discussions with Harris Hill, though they're very much in agreement with letting us put the equipment up there, is that they will do this with a swap with the police department to provide manpower during their annual ski jump, which currently they pay for. And I believe Chief Wren is in discussions with them now trying to work out all the details on that, if the equipment has to go up there. So basically there's an immediate savings of over $16,000 a year. And the payback will be right around 4 years at that cost of what we'd be paying out for the leases on these sites. Like I said, neither BMH or SIT is charging us, you know, all of these agencies, BMH, SIT, and Harris Hill, have just been wonderful to work with, and they've been very accommodating. So, you know, they've been great, and they're making this all possible. if you folks decide that this is the route we want to go. So I think with that, to keep it short, that's kind of my intro.
Before
Bruce
Joe or
Bellevue?
Bruce, go ahead. Patrick had something you wanted to add.
Yes. I just wanted to make it clear, in a sense, what I think the staff is able to say is that we've got a better plan developed today than signing a long-term lease agreement for the Wintastica Tower site. One which is going to provide real savings, and one which is built with some key community partners that have made very generous offers to the town to situate our equipment at their locations. Somebody I just want to call out specifically is Mr. Bellevue, who is our communications vendor and with whom we couldn't have possibly put this together without his assistance. And I'm sure Joe will sort of describe as to why, was even able to work with other communities that he works for in terms of providing some equipment that would help serve as a backup option for the police. Just so it's clear, it's very clear to us where the fire department communication equipment would go. There are two options for the police department that are going to be based on either getting the grant or not getting the grant. However, Mr. Bellevue has worked with us to develop an option and in fact a quote for services that is supportive of either option. So essentially what we're at today is simply the need for financial resources to make these plans happen. And I'm going to kick it back to Joe.
The only thing I'd like to add is a sidebar that Joe and I have had during the meeting, and that is the exposure that the town has of maintaining that power line going up to the mountain. I hold my breath that we don't have a bad ice storm or something that would take down that power line. The town could be looking at a huge bill to replace telephone poles and power lines going up to the mountain. So not only do you have the cost savings that you're looking at here in real dollars, you also have a cost savings of something that, of the exposure. So I think, you know, that is certainly worth looking at real hard. Also, if I were to receive a call from Joe tonight to go up to the mountain to service, I frankly don't know how I would get up there. It would be a walk with ice shoes and whatever. I mean,
drive you up.
Sure. One of the, I think the point Bruce is trying to make is that that's a challenging location to get to, whereas the hospital, for example, is right up the road.
Well, just can I interject something? I don't think there's one person on this board that wasn't in agreement when this all came about. And correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there was anybody that was against getting rid of that thing on the top of the mountain. So I'm glad, in a way, it was kind of forced into our lap. The one question I have, Gene, is what does your grant involve? I mean, what it...
The grant that we've applied for through Homeland Security is going to replace mobile radios, portable radios, and it's a voting repeater system. So years ago, the fire department increased their radio. They have a Cadillac radio system right now, and we're behind the curve. Hopefully we're going to get voting repeater systems, so our mobiles and portables will reach out, talk to those repeaters around town, and then get back to dispatch. So
okay.
we're looking to increase all of that if approved.
So it's new equipment in that?
New equipment
in that whole thing.
It would make his system much like what the fire system is.
Right. It would bring the police department communication system up to the level of the fire department communication system, and in fact, it would marry them together insofar as their use of the microwave system, as I understand it.
Bringing it into the 21st century?
The voting system, what it does, when a communication device, a portable and mobile, talks, it reaches out and it picks up whichever one of these systems has a stronger signal. That's the one that receives it and retransmits it to where it needs to go.
I just think this is a win-win situation all the way around. You know, it's something that was forced into our lap, and you know, that going from $10 to $12,000 was just you know, absurd, and kind of forced this issue. And like Mr. Bellevue said, that one ice storm and we're out of luck. So, and we've probably skated around that a few years in the past, so.
I want to give Joe an opportunity to give anything that he wants to explain to the board at this point, because I know you've done a lot of work, and if there's anything you want to explain to us, please do that.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, right now I think we're in a lose-lose situation up there because we are very vulnerable as far as, you know, if we have a problem with that power line, we're looking at $20,000–$30,000 just to get it back up. And I don't think that's a position that I don't want to be in, having, because the problem with that site is if we lose that site, that's kind of like the main hub for our system, and if we lose that, our whole system's out. So getting it to a more reliable location, such as the hospital, I mean, that's like the #1 priority for the power companies, to get power back to the hospital. So it's a win-win situation for us, and we're lucky that they were so willing to work with us. And it's just, and hopefully the police department can get that grant, because both of our systems will mirror each other and use part of ours. By using part of our system, it's going to save, you know, $150,000 roughly to that grant. So hopefully it's more appealing to that grants committee to give that to them. But we did find a backup location. Liz Richards and the Harris Hill Ski Jump Committee have been, you know, more than happy to work with us as far as a temporary location, so that we can move somewhere, still apply for grant funding, so that their system needs to be upgraded soon. I mean, because they're operating on an antiquated system, and it's hard to get parts for it. So something needs to be done, so that if we can get them to this temporary location until they can secure grant funding, that would be, they've been very agreeable to that. So I think it's in the town's best interest. It's going to be a win-win. We're going to save some money, and we're going to get to a little bit more of a reliable location.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad they kind of forced the issue for us.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, I want to thank you for your hard work.
Yeah.
You know, and Bruce as well. I've heard, you know, really good things from the interim town manager about working with both of you and with everybody on the project. So really, it's a significant achievement. Donna, did you have something you wanted to?
I just wanted to know, Gene, when do you have a decision on that grant?
We have some paperwork due to them this Friday. They have another meeting scheduled for the 16th, so shortly after that, hopefully we'll know.
Good.
It's been extended a couple times as they've requested more information, so that's actually a good sign.
But not a long wait.
No.
That is a good sign if they're asking for more stuff.
And so, you know, with this move by the board this evening, our plan would be to pull the trigger as soon as we get the word on Gene's grant. Dave?
Yeah, just a clarification on the estimate, the December 12th estimate. It says total project cost $47,625, with the motions for $57,500. That's
Patrick.
What's the difference?
That's me.
Really? You get 10 grand for doing it?
Yeah, it's a little perk I get.
Little trip to the Caribbean.
Mr. Bellevue provided us with a quote for the work that he has scoped out. There is some additional electric work, and so either, in effect, the difference between the two is to accommodate the running an electrical line. While the hospital, for example, has graciously offered to pay the cost of the electricity, running the line to this would be a cost that we would take. And so that same piece of work would need to be done either potentially at Harris Hill. So this number provides us with plenty of coverage to cover both the work that Mr. Bellevue would do, and in addition, the electrical contracting.
Great.
So, thank you.
I take it there's no risk for helicopter rental with this weather? We're going to be able to do that without a problem?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else from the board? When we first learned that the lease payments on the tower were going to increase, the first question that the board had was whether we needed to continue the system as it currently exists, or whether we could redevelop the system in a way that would be more efficient and more cost-effective for the town. And I really want to thank the members of the fire department and the police department and Mr. Bellevue, and also Patrick, for your hard work in investigating what it would cost and in developing a much more effective and cost-efficient long-term option to support our emergency communications tools. I also want to specifically thank the Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, School for International Training, and the Harris Hill Association for graciously agreeing to allow the town to co-locate these facilities and this equipment on their sites. It's really a significant assistance to the public good as a whole, and we really want to thank these community partners as well. The two motions that we have, the first one is really to just authorize the town manager to do this work as soon as it's available, and then to the extent that we don't have the money in the current year's budget, we'll be asking town meeting to authorize us to spend the money out of the accumulated surplus, which I would note from the audit that just came through stands at $1,712,852, hot off the presses, December 20th, but distributed today. So we're ready for that first motion unless there's any further discussion.
No, wait, can you, we're doing
What?
two motions?
We are. The first motion,
Can we just pick one?
no. The first motion is to authorize the town manager to do the work now.
Right.
And it says, yea, verily go forth and move the equipment.
So
All right? So that's the first motion. The second motion is going to be to ask town meeting to authorize the expenditure of up to the cost of this work, which is $57,500, from the surplus as it exists right now, which can't be expended without town meeting authority, if we don't have the money in the operating budget.
Right.
I saw you guys looking at those motions before and wondering why we were doing them.
Yes.
We were confused, yeah.
That's
We're
why.
just a little confused.
So the first one is to say, Patrick, do it now.
Yep.
And the second is, if the money ain't there in this year's budget, we'll get it out of the savings
I
account.
like your thinking.
Okay?
Okay,
So, you want to make the first motion?
sure. To authorize the interim town manager to contract with Bellevue Communications in an amount not to exceed $57,500 to relocate Brattleboro Fire and Brattleboro Police radio equipment off of Wantasticate Mountain.
Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Somebody want to make another motion?
Sure. To add the following article to the 2014 Representative Town Meeting warning, to see if the town will vote to appropriate up to $57,500 from the unassigned fund balance to defray the costs associated with relocation of radio communications equipment off of Wantasticate Mountain.
Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen,
Beautiful.
for all your hard work.
Thank you
I
so
don't want
much.
you to think that this end of the table was really,
Stupid.
don't even.
The next matter on the agenda, do we need a break or can the ASL interpreters continue? All set?
Okay.
The next matter on the agenda is to appoint a representative for Connecticut River Transit. Unfortunately, the young man who attended the meeting earlier, who's now ridden his bicycle home, didn't want to be the representative, He did. And as I understand it, nobody has volunteered. So, at this point, we have a number of open committee vacancies with rolling deadline. Anybody who wants to be on one of these committees or take any one of these slots is encouraged to put your name in at any time. And I would just like to add the Connecticut River Transit Board position to that list. Patrick, do we need a motion or can we just add it to the open list of committee vacancies?
That list, and you should know I'm working to try and drum up some,
Yep,
some interest.
very good. So for right now.
Right now?
He'll be back.
Right now.
Pulling people
So,
off the street.
Jan, if we can just add the Connecticut River Transit Board position to the open list of committee appointments. And if anybody's interested, please put your name in.
Mike Bukasi, you got some time.
So the next matter on the agenda is accepting and appropriating a grant from VDE MHS Technical Rescue Grant, Fire Department. Chief, Assistant Chief. Welcome back.
In the November 19th board meeting, the board approved a request for the fire department to apply for a grant to cover multiple training sessions from January through July of 2014. And that grant also included a request to purchase a rapid deployment craft for the RDC, the RAFT, that we've talked about a couple times now. That grant has been awarded to the fire department, and we're here tonight to ask you to accept it.
Is there any questions from anybody on the board?
No, it's wonderful.
Hearing none, and do we want to make a motion?
I'll do it. To accept an appropriated grant in the amount of $30,067.54 from the Vermont Department of Emergency Management, Homeland Security for technical rescue training and equipment.
We have a motion. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Next matter on the agenda is accept an appropriated grant for GHS equipment incentive.
Is this like musical chairs?
You should have just stayed there.
Why don't you just stay there? For
Hi, Gene.
Good evening. So the police department was notified by the Governor's Highway Safety Program that throughout the year we participated in some traffic enforcement events, mostly on holiday weekends. And if a department participates in so many numbers of those events, we are eligible to receive a $5,000 equipment grant. What that is for traffic enforcement equipment. So what we're looking to do is accept and appropriate the $5,000 that we've been awarded to buy portable radar equipment with.
Excellent. Portable radar is just what we're looking for traffic safety too. Excellent. Is there any discussion or questions? Are we ready for a motion? We are ready for a motion. Somebody want to make a motion?
Sure. To accept and appropriate a grant in the amount of $5,000 from Vermont Department of Public Safety for approved public safety equipment.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is fiscal year 15 budget. I think what we'll do is I'm going to start with an overview of how we got to where we are today, what some of the open issues are that remain, what the bottom line looks like, and
You're going to get right into it, aren't you?
we are right into it. And then there will be some other items for discussion today. At a meeting in November, the Select Board discussed the beginning of the budget process. And I made a presentation in public that addressed some of the choices we were going to have to make and the different funding figures that we needed to grapple with. The Select Board, along with all department heads and many other members of the administration and many members of the public, we want to thank everybody for your participation, has met 5 times, I believe, since that meeting in November, all in meetings that were publicly warned, but were not the regularly scheduled business meeting. We began this process by trying to make a determination of the goals of the Select Board in reaching budget decisions. And so we began by making a decision about what capital spending might be cut from the proposed capital budget, and then identifying further cuts that we would need to consider, that we would ask the interim town manager to communicate about with department heads and to bring back to us. The interim town manager worked diligently with department heads and other members of the administration throughout this process. We also want to thank Mr. O'Connor for all of his hard work, and came back to the board and identified a series of potential cuts to the budget with the goal of bringing in a budget that would essentially level fund our services from one year to the next, or level fund the funding for those services, along with the additional police fire bond payments. So we essentially had two different potential budget figures. One would have been a budget of about $16,730,000. The other was a budget of $16,306,000. The board was presented 4 or 6 weeks ago with all of these potential cuts. We went through each of them with the department heads and with the interim town manager. And then we considered additional areas in which we might think about paring back the budget in order to reduce the impact and lower the impact on Brattleboro's taxpayers. So we made various proposals about things that might be considered. We looked at the possibility of reducing the number of hours that town offices were open from 37.5 hours to 36 hours to 32 hours, and the impact that that would have on services. We looked at personnel cuts, and we had specific personnel positions that were proposed to us that might be eliminated, and we looked at the impact of those potential cuts. The board listed out at its Sunday afternoon meeting a whole string of individual service cuts that we might consider. We looked at cutting the sidewalk snow plowing. We looked at cutting the street sweeper. We looked at the possibility of outsourcing park maintenance and building maintenance. We discussed the potential for police, fire, rescue, dispatch efficiencies. We looked at our animal control function. We looked at whether abandoning roads was a potential alternative. We looked at the potential for eliminating payments to the fire call staff. We discussed, and I was surprised to hear this from a member of the Solid Waste Committee, or a former member of the Solid Waste Committee, the possibility of eliminating town-financed trash pickup. We looked at eliminating line striping, not paying for traffic safety equipment. We looked at large department full-time equivalent cuts. We've looked at human services funding and whether that can be justified. We've looked at the agriculture fund. We've looked at energy efficiency work and pay-as-you-throw. We've discussed payment in lieu of taxes and the possibility of fee-for-service work and charging nonprofits for fee-for-service. We've looked again at the possibility of the local options sales tax, and we've also discussed whether the benefits that are being paid to town employees in the long term are sustainable. Many of these issues are long-term questions that we need to address over the course of the coming year. I think it's fair to say that the board as a whole concluded that many of the cuts that were at least discussed would cut into core municipal services in a way that we did not at this point find particularly acceptable. For example, at this point, the fire department operates with 7-member battalions, 3 shifts over the course of a day, and then has its administration. And a personnel cut that would have reduced one of the members of those battalions and would have therefore reduced fire service within the town is something that we did not consider to be an acceptable reduction in services that are provided by this town. Similarly, We didn't consider it acceptable at this time to not fill a current certified law enforcement officer position, because we're at staffing levels that provide us with the bare minimum of what we need to provide public safety in the town. The Public Works Department has seen significant cuts over the years, and eliminating any position within that department would wind up meaning that roads weren't paved or maintained, or crosswalks weren't being painted, and the sidewalks were not being plowed, and those things were not acceptable. After doing all of that work, we have proposed and are going to be voting to adopt at the next select board meeting on the 21st a total budget of $16,306,000, $306,285. So $16,306,285. That $16,306,285 includes a capital transfer from the capital fund of $310,000 and change, which is money that we saved off of the renovations to the skating rink that came in at way less than the money town meeting authorized us to pay last year for these renovations. Now, there are some additional items that we plan to address as part of this budget. First, it is likely that there's going to be a motion next week that's going to be worded substantially as follows. Should the town of Brattleboro provide property tax relief and help defray the costs of the police fire renovation project by adopting a local option sales tax? That's something that we think the voters should weigh in on, and we will then probably have a bond article on the town meeting, not a bond article, that tax article on the town meeting warning as well. Also, we've previously voted to consider redesignating or retasking the funds in the agriculture fund in order to use that money for 2014 property tax relief. So that's another item that's going to be on the warning. I said before that we've got, according to the audited financials, $1,712,000 in the undesignated, unreserved surplus at this point, and that's information that we just got when the financials were finalized. The audited financials were just finalized. I would note that we already have two items on the budget to take money out of that surplus. One is to spend $95,000 to repair the Elm Street, or to pay for the Elm Street work, and the second is to pay the $55,000 for the communications tower. Thank you, Patrick. So we're already asking for some money out of the surplus fund to pay for unanticipated expenses this year. Two additional items I would point out before opening this up for further discussion. First, in looking at the comparison between FY14 and FY15 under revenue and expenses, one will see that the budget of $16 million I'm sorry, I'll start that in a full sentence in a minute. $16,306,285 is an increase, at least on its face, of $1,382,000 from the $14,923,357 budget that was approved last year. It should be noted, however, that we also approved last year $756,000 for capital projects that wasn't reflected on either that revenue or that expense budget because it all remained within capital. So actually last year's expenditures were
About 15.6.
were $15,679,000, which means that the increase is significantly less than the $1.3 million that's reflected in the change on the documents that were provided to us. Second, this year's budget includes $742,000 in principal and interest payments for the police fire facility, which is fully 5.5 cents of the contemplated 8.7 cent tax increase. I have 2 additional comments following from that observation. First of all, this is not the biggest year for the police fire bond payment. The biggest year, I believe, is next year, where we'll be paying approximately $1.2 million in principal and interest payments on that bond, which means that we're going to be paying about $450,000 more next year in bond payments than this year. So in anticipation of John suggesting that we throw additional money from the surplus for tax relief this year, I would point out to the board that next year the crunch is going to be way worse, because we're going to be looking at $450,000 more in funding for the police fire facility beyond the increase that we've already experienced this year. So my position ultimately will be that if we're looking at paying more money out of the surplus, we should defer that to next year rather than this year, although I understand everybody's going to be looking at that issue independently. Second, and the last thing I'll say as part of this lengthy monologue, I'm sorry to occupy the mic for this long, is that last year we had about $750,000 in extra surplus in the capital fund that we decided to spend all last year. And so our tax increase last year was less than a penny, if I recall correctly.
A little over a penny.
Or a little over a penny last year, but it was just around a penny. And really, this 8.7 cent increase this year is better thought of as an increase that's spread over both last year and this year, because a significant part of the money that we're paying now by way of increase actually was incurred last year. We just funded it a different way out of the surplus. So this 8.7 cent increase this year really needs to be viewed as a 2-year increase, but last year we had the cash and we just paid the cash out of pocket rather than raising taxes. And it made sense last year. We could have saved half that money and lowered the impact this year, but then last year we would have kept more money in the bank and then had it this year to lower the cost of taxes, but we gave the money back to the taxpayers last year. So that's my overview of the budget. I'm sorry for taking so much time, and now we're really available to the floor or anybody from the board to speak to any issues relating to the budget. Anybody have anything else they want to speak to? Budget in general or surplus related, whatever you want to do.
Do you want our opinions, or, I mean...
Anything you want to say. I mean, I think this is the time for the public to hear us talk about the budget, because we're approving it next time, and we've done all the work to get here.
Well, I'll say what, unless John wants to go first. I mean, we've had numerous meetings on this, so we sort of all know where we are. But I just want to reiterate what I say every single time, and I know it drives people crazy, but, you know, we're spending, in this budget, the reason that we are where we are with an 8.7 cent increase is because we're taking the surplus money from the skating rink, which we will not have next year, which is a huge concern to me, because we've built a budget around one-time funds. So we actually, David was talking about was it 450,000 that we're going to be down next year?
450 plus
Right.
the 310.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
absolutely
I mean,
right.
it's more than 450. It's 450 plus 310. So,
And then the operating increases too.
right. So, I mean, we're next year, and I just want us to keep this in mind because, it's not like we've solved our problems. This budget has not solved our problems. I think we're, and I hate the term kicking the can down the road, but that's what we're doing. And I'm not making judgments on that, but I'm just saying that's what we're doing. So I'm very big into the long-range planning, long-term planning, looking into anything we can, starting right after town meeting to look at what we need to do, because we can't come back a year from now being in the same situation that we are now. And it really troubles me, the skating rink money. So, I'm looking at not only what we can do now, but what we can do next year, because it's going to be worse for us. And I think we're all going to sit around at the table realizing we're going to have to do some of the painful things that we didn't want to do this time. I mean, that's my biggest fear, that if we don't, start figuring things out now, we're just going to get worse.
Yep. And
Next.
Yep. And I do think we have to think about that. You guys all know my opinion, but I'll voice it to the public. There was if you want to call it a windfall last year of $750,000, and they did apply to the taxes to lower it. I applaud that. I think we should do the same thing again this year. And our undesignated reserve system is there because of the taxes. That's how it's raised. That's how we have that cushion. I think we need to do all our due diligence to lower the taxes to the people in town. And I know we're going to be in the same situation next year, but as Patrick so pointed out eloquently, that we're only halfway through our year. We don't know what we're going to have for a windfall, what we're going to have for savings. By the time the end of the year, we may not have any. We may have some. I just think that coming in with an 8.7 cent increase is just way too high. And I'm going to recommend that we take $300,000 out of the undesignated reserve fund, because that lowers it. Every 100,000 lowers it about 1%. Am I correct?
It's about 115,000.
Somewhere around.
A penny.
A penny. So, and as I stated in the beginning, I really wanted to come in around 3 to 5 cents. And so, if we're somewhere in the 6 cent range or the 5, I'm very happy with that. But I know we have a lot to do. And if this board is here next year, I think that April 1st we should start on this, not wait until September or whatever. Just really start looking into these things. I completely agree with Kate that we have to start thinking long range, and we have to start thinking about the revenue end and how we get more. But right now, the single-family homeowners of this town are hurting, and I just think it's our due diligence to do as much as we can to lower that impact. And I know you guys have heard it, but now the world has heard it.
Anything you want to say?
I think what I would add to the conversation that's happened is, I think, David, you really summarized what the specific work has been in the meetings that we've had to really take a look at the budget. And I want to assure the people who are not in those rooms that we all sat together and really poured over the specific ramifications of different cuts. And, what really struck me was how intricately linked to multifaceted safety issues many of the cuts that we considered just are, so that we can't simply make the decision to slash the budget and still have the people choosing to live in this town enjoy the profound level of service and privileges and human services. And so I think it was a very sobering and important process for us to go through as a board. I think we have gotten as close to our goal of not increasing the tax rate. I still think it's going to be a burden on taxpayers, and that we're going to continue, if this board is privileged enough to sit together next year, and that's up to the town. I think we have set something in motion that really could increase fiscal responsibility, and I think that is by looking ahead and looking at what every year boards are up against and trying to put in place some practices that will eventually get us on track. So I've appreciated this process. It hasn't been a perfect process, and it's a complex tangle of issues with real consequences, and we're going to continue to do our best with it.
I think I would echo pretty much everything that's been said. There are some specific things I'd like to mention. The first thing I think was where we started, which was because there was $750,000 or actually a little more than that available last year that wasn't available to us looking at this budget, the budget that we're talking about now. We actually started off in a $750,000 hole, and so just catching up with that was kind of a shock. Or understanding that was kind of a shock. I think the process of hearing from all the departments from the very beginning of the select board, and then especially through the budget process, it brought a lot of things to light. I think the quality of the services and the efficiency that they're being delivered, and the desire of the community to have those services, I think really showed up. Starting with some people that came in the summer to talk about how much some elderly citizens who came in the summer to talk about using the pool all summer long for water aerobics and how valuable that was, and just to think about reducing the pool hours was just it's not something we can do. We talked about not ordering some cruisers and breaking from the schedule of replacing equipment, but that schedule is there for a reason. The reason is that this is the most efficient and effective way to do it. That we maintain equipment as well as we possibly can. We beat it up pretty good in the process. And when it has to be replaced, we have to replace it. It's not like we can just decide not to do that. We have to. It's the only way you can do it. The library is, if you look at all the quality indicators for libraries around the state, and our library is first in many of them, and I think it is first in the percentage of the per capita residents that actually are members and use the library, and it's important to a lot of people. I think that the change that Donna said that we all spoken about is that we really are beginning to look long term, and like energy savings that I tend to harp on a lot, it's we need to look at new sources of revenue and new ways of lowering costs and new investments. And one of the things that the previous board did was contract to purchase energy credits from a solar array. And that array will be in place this summer, and we'll start to see some revenue from that in our reduced electric bills. And hopefully we can look into more of those kinds of investments to actually generate revenue by providing another utility. So I think if anybody that's watching this, or anybody that's looking at this budget and going, oh my God, what are they thinking, which is kind of where we all start, is I think if you'd been here with us, you'd be right where we are. And I think we all share John's goal of getting the taxes as low as possible. And believe it or not, this is, I think, as low as possible.
Can I make a request?
Please.
Is there a way that we can get out, everybody sees, 8.7 cents, but I don't think people really understand what that means dollar-wise for themselves. Can you get that info out? That's the 100,000, 200,000. Because I think we should make sure that the media people have it too, because I just think people need to see what it really means and not just 8.7 cents.
I do want to just say one more thing, that I really appreciate everything the department heads did, everybody at this table, everybody over at this table. It has been, like Donna said, it was really, it's an eye-opener, and I've been through 2 of them already. But this year seemed like it was more of an eye-opener. So kudos out to everyone. They put in yeoman's work, as someone says. So a lot of work went into this.
One of the goals we adopted at the beginning of this year was year-round budgeting and understanding the services that are provided as a core aspect of that. And there's really no reason that we have to wait until March or April to continue with the work that we're doing. We needed to understand fully the expense side in order to be able to do this budget work and understand where the cuts were possible. But we are short-staffed in the town manager's office, but it is our goal to continue pushing forward with many of the identified areas where we've talked about whether additional revenues might be available. And I don't expect that that process is going to change. We can finalize the budget, and we're going to continue thinking about those going forward as part of this process. And we've also talked, and I've had those discussions with the interim town manager about just trying to conceive of whether there is a different way for us to do business in any of the areas where we do business that will ultimately result in lowering our expense structure. But it certainly appears at this time, based upon all the work that we've done, that running this town as it's run costs this amount of money. And I don't think that it's fair to say that we're providing any champagne level of services. These are basic core municipal services that we're providing. Police, fire, public works, library, and parks and recs. And that's what it costs to run this town, unless we can find a different way of doing business or additional sources to raise money. So we're going to have a series of motions at the next meeting to approve this budget and to address various other funding issues, and we'll have those all organized before the next meeting. Is there any further discussion about the budget or any questions? Mr. Montgomery.
The ice rink funds that are now being rolled into funds that weren't used this year. Is it not true that the committee is going to come forward with a proposal and need or recommend improvements next year or the year after?
No. The belief at the last town meeting and through the spring was that it could cost somewhere between $310.5 million to make improvements that would result in the ice skating rink working at all. And then about 6 meetings ago, the skating rink committee, as a result of all of its work, determined that in closing the plate and frame structure, which is what I don't remember which part. I did the tour and I understood it at the time. In closing the plate and frame, which is now outside, will
where the compressor is,
will keep the condenser or compressor working for many, many years to come, and that we needed to spend about $50,000 in order to extend the working life of the skating rink equipment for the next 10 years.
Okay. The second
I
point.
think that's in order to be able to save for a more comprehensive transition.
Maybe in a decade.
Right.
Maybe in a decade.
I'd like to speak to the pay-as-you-throw. I am a strong believer that those who pollute should pay for it, and should pay directly and should pay immediately. And solid waste is a form of pollution. And right now that cost is completely hidden. People just put their garbage out on the sidewalk and assume it doesn't cost anything. And so I would encourage you all to consider that as one of your first options for increasing revenue.
There actually
We don't-
is a line item that's been added for pay-as-you-throw education, because actually revisions to the solid waste laws at the state level require some form of pay-as-you-throw to be adopted within
2016, isn't it?
next year at the beginning of 2016. I'd also commend Patrick, who has begun looking with a much more critical eye towards the operations of the solid waste district in order to make sure that it is operating in a manner that serves Brattleboro's interests as well as its own and other towns. Was I allowed to say that?
And I would like to first point out, too, that pay-as-you-throw was adopted at one point.
Right.
So, 'cause
I
was on-
remember.
So do I.
The legislature, the governor obviously agree with that.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen.
Any further discussion about the budget at this point? I think that's the end of the agenda, other than somebody reading the meeting announcements.
Look at
We're all retiring.
John's going to do it. He's got it
Oh,
in front
thanks,
of him.
John.
Thanks, John.
Nice to
Yeah,
meet you.
you're welcome.
Where's Ken when you need him?
Yeah,
Not here.
yeah.
Freezing.
Thursday, January 9th, 2014, at 5:15 p.m., Skate Park Site Selection Committee at the Gibson-Aiken Center. Friday, January 10th, at 10 a.m., ADA Advisory Committee, Marlboro College Graduate Center. 4 p.m., Finance Committee, Hannah Cosman Room. Monday, January 13th, 6 p.m., Planning Commission Select Board Meeting Room, Select Board Meeting Room. 6 p.m., Rec and Parks Board Meeting, Gibson-Aiken Center. Tuesday, January 14th, 4 p.m., Arts Committee, Hannah Cosman Meeting Room. 7 p.m., Tree Advisory Committee, Hannah Cosman Meeting Room. Wednesday, January 15th, 5:15 p.m., West River Park Meeting, Gibson-Aiken Center. Thursday, January 16th, 4 p.m., Police Fire Facility Building Committee, Hannah Cosman Room. Friday, January 17th, 4 p.m., Finance Committee, Hannah Cosman. Monday, January 20th, 8:30 a.m., Library closed for Martin Luther King Day. Tuesday, January 21st, 6:15 p.m., Select Board Meeting, Select Board Room, here, live, BCTV.
We're ready for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you, members of the press. Thank you, ASL interpreters. Thank you, everybody who was in attendance. Thank you, BCTV.
Does anybody have the liquor license?
Oh, yeah, it's
for,
down.